Welcome to the GCV Weekly Briefing Podcast, where we break down key financial and economic developments shaping the landscape for investors, businesses, and policymakers. This week, we'll be diving into four major stories, from the US's shifting tariffs to the UK's new support for side hustlers, the rise in higher rate taxpayers, and the nation's leadership in AI adoption. There's a lot to unpack, so let's get started. First, let's talk about how new US tariff policies under the Trump administration are continuing to reshape global trade dynamics. Trump's aggressive approach to tariffs is being seen as overhauling decades of free trade agreements, causing ripples in trade relations with both allies and rivals. The most recent wave includes a hefty 25% tariff on steel and aluminium imports from all countries, and there were even threats to increase tariffs on Canadian goods to 50%. However, these threats were later withdrawn after Canada suspended a tax on US-bound electricity. Despite the resolution, the impacts will still be felt. Meanwhile, the European Union retaliated this year, imposing $28 billion in counter tariffs on US goods. Trump responded by warning off additional levies targeting specific European industries, leaving businesses bracing for further disruption. Across the Atlantic, Canada and Mexico were hit with 25% tariffs as of March, although the US temporarily paused duties on some goods compliant with the United States-Mexico-Canada agreement until April. However, the situation remains tense, with Trump considering new reciprocal tariffs on Canadian lumber and dairy. Canada, for its part, has already imposed $20 billion in new duties on US goods. And of course, there's China's ongoing trade war with the US. The US raised tariffs by 20%, adding to the existing 10% duties, while China retaliated by imposing up to 15% tariffs on US farm products, such as chicken and pork. As you can see, these tariffs are sparking trade wars across the globe. The big question now is, which nations will ultimately gain the upper hand in key industries? It's something we'll be keeping a close eye on over the coming months. Now, shifting gears to the UK, there's some positive news for side hustlers. The government has announced a major tax break for thousands of people running side businesses, increasing the self-assessment tax threshold from 1,000 to 3,000. This means that an estimated 300,000 individuals will no longer need to file tax returns. Additionally, 90,000 people will now pay no tax at all under the new rule, and others will be able to settle their dues through streamlined online service, making the whole process easier and less time-consuming. Treasury Exchequer Secretary James Murray emphasised that the change is aimed at allowing Brits to make the very most of their entrepreneurial spirit. By removing tax obligations, the government hopes to free up time for individuals to grow their ventures. To enhance transparency, online markets like Vinted and Depop are now required to share sellers' data with HMRC, further pushing towards a digital-first approach to taxation. Additionally, HMRC is modernising its systems, learning from private sector giants like Barclays and John Lewis by incorporating AI and test and learn strategies to streamline tax collection. James Murray further points out, from trading old games to creating content on social media, we are changing the way HMRC works to make it easier for Brits to make the most of their entrepreneurial spirit. Taking hundreds of thousands of people out of filing tax returns means less time filling out forms and more time for them to grow their side hustles. On the flip side of that positive story, we're looking at how the number of UK workers paying the 40% tax rate has risen sharply, reaching a record 5.1 million, up 15% from the previous year. This increase is a result of frozen tax thresholds and inflation, meaning even middle-income earners are being pulled into higher tax brackets. Experts have warned that this trend is far from over. In fact, by 2028, the number of higher rate taxpayers could hit 9 million, with some estimates suggesting it might even reach 10 million by the end of the decade. This freeze, initially introduced by Rishi Sunak in 2021 to recover pandemic costs, was extended by Jeremy Hunt until 2028. While tax brackets typically rise with inflation, keeping them static leads to what's called fiscal drag, where more people end up in higher tax brackets as wages increase. As Darwin Friend from Taxpayers Alliance put it, frozen thresholds and higher inflation mean even many struggling households are now being hit with higher tax rates. Meanwhile, the number of people paying 45% additional rate on earnings over £125,140 has surged to 600,000. This situation is putting pressure on Chancellor Rachel Reeves, who faces calls to lift the freeze in her upcoming mini-budget, though the government cites financial constraints which may force her to extend it further. For many UK taxpayers, especially high-rate earners, managing tax liabilities is becoming more and more important. Options such as salary sacrifice schemes, tax-efficient investments, and maximising pension contributions can provide some relief. On the tech front, the UK is emerging as a leader in AI adoption, far outpacing its European counterparts. A recent report from AI platform Dataiku revealed that just 26% of UK CEOs delayed AI projects due to regulatory uncertainty, compared to a much higher 59% in France. UK businesses are adopting AI rapidly, with 23% of CEOs having formal AI roadmaps for the year ahead, almost double the global average of 12%. In stark contrast, only 5% of German CEOs have outlined AI plans. The European Union's AI Act, which is the most comprehensive AI regulation to date, has created significant uncertainty, causing businesses to hesitate in making AI investments. By contrast, the UK has a more flexible regulatory environment, which has encouraged innovation. However, as Florian Duetu, CEO of Dataiku, noted, when CEOs have confidence in compliance and control over governance, they can move faster, scale smarter, and fully capitalize on AI's potential. This confidence is critical as businesses race to implement AI solutions and gain a competitive edge. As we've seen today, a variety of factors are shaping the global economy, from the ripple effects of shifting tariff policies to the UK's effort to support side hustlers. Looking ahead, we'll continue to monitor the effects of the UK's frozen tax thresholds and the ongoing developments in global trade and technology. Be sure to stay tuned for next week's weekly briefing, which will include the Bank of England's rate decision. Otherwise, that's all for today's update. Thank you for listening, and I'll catch you next week.